guest speakers once a month that talk about their correlation to addiction versus loved one, mother, son, and in this case, sibling. Um, we give free counseling, one on one, and group resources to individuals who have loved ones struggling with addiction. And we are so honored today to have our guest speaker, Catherine Chadwick. She has an amazing podcast and an amazing message for a really delicate subject that she touches upon so phenomenally. Um, but yeah, this month we're talking about sibling loss and sibling addiction and that perspective, a perspective that isn't really talked about a whole lot. And so the fact that we have the honor of hearing her story today is really, really, really fantastic. So I'd love to open the floor to Catherine to kind of introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, I'm Catherine, whatever you guys prefer. I have there's a lot to say, but I'll keep it short. I work in mental health. I've been in mental health for 10 years. And I also am kind of in the holistic wellness world as a yoga teacher, a yoga therapist, and a breathwork facilitator. And that particular those practices have just been really huge in my healing journey and helping me get through the grief of sibling loss because it's a really big loss and there's not a lot of resources out there for it. So yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. So, um, first question out of the gate, could you share how addiction has personally impacted your life or the life of somebody close to you?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say that it's impacted my life in a lot of ways. It's definitely something that runs in my family. Like for most people who struggled with addiction, it's a lot of it's genetic, right? Where you have that genetic predisposition. So for me, I have been surrounded by addiction a lot in my life. One of my best friends growing up, her family, there was a lot of addiction there. My brother and I saw a lot of that. My parents both had their own struggles when they were younger, but really got those struggles under wraps. And then I struggled myself a lot when I was in college. I James and I did not have a like horrible childhood by any means. We had a pretty typical 90s, early 2000s childhood. But with that, right, like the parenting styles were very different back then. And then it was a lot of like, do what I say, not as I do, which is not a bad thing. It's not, there's no judgment. We were in the process of learning as a society. But because of that, there was a lot of stuff that James and I both internalized, I think. And when I got to college and I had a little bit more freedom that was ever really used to having, I I went a little buck wild and I really kind of started to develop a problem because I didn't know how to deal with my emotions and like the big feelings of that because I am a very intuitive, emotional person and I didn't always know how to deal with that. So I was self-medicating my way through that because it was what made having such big emotions more manageable. And then for my brother, I mean, my brother struggled for a long time. I want to say he definitely started out younger than me, which I think is pretty typical for boys, especially when they have like any kind of neurodivergency diagnosis, especially ADHD, because that comes with a lot of impulsivity and a lot of a tendency for substance abuse because of that impulsivity. And so my brother started when he was younger with substances. It started off pretty normal for him, like weed, like 13, smoking weed. And then as he got older, though, it definitely developed into more of like a social drinking and social drugging. But then from there, like again, there was a lot of stuff internalized from our childhood that I don't think he ever dealt with because we conditioned boys to like suck it up and rub some dirt in it and be a man. And because of that, he never really dealt with any of that stuff. So once he started drinking and drugging socially, it was very similar to me. James just didn't have the skills to get it under wraps as well as I did, but he was self-medicating all the way up until he passed away, which was like a month before his 22nd birthday. So from like 16, I think his first stay in rehab was when he was 16 or 17, all the way up until he was almost 22 years old. So that was unfortunately the big bulk of James's last few years here, unfortunately.
We have quite a few mental health workshops, and mental health and addiction go very, very hand in hand. So when you say
Absolutely.
ADHD, impulsivity, a lot of times those are linked for sure.
Yeah, and those are definitely a little bit of a sidebar, but those are like I would say my biggest drivers behind like always wanting to really be having these conversations because we don't talk enough about that in our society. There's so many stigmas around substance use and the people what their character is, who people who use substances, and it's not that black and white. It's so much more complicated than that. And a lot of the times it does come down to like childhood trauma, mental health, coping, like having healthy coping skills over substance use, which is an unhealthy coping skill, right? So, yeah. I love that you guys have that resource because it's so needed and we need to have these conversations more.
Yeah. Yeah. Our chief program officer, Charlotte, she's actually in the audience today. Um, she she works as a counselor in Utah, and they're actually changing the wording around addiction instead of saying like junkie or all these negative connotations. They're using the terms substance abuse disorder for everything
Yes.
because it is. It's a struggle. It's a diagnosis. It's a for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. I love to hear because I work in a mental health agency where we've been also changing that language very intentionally. But it just like gets me all giddy inside to hear that that is being done everywhere or elsewhere because it needs to be. We need to change our language because language shapes the way we see the world, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Um, what advice would you give to siblings who have siblings struggling with their own addiction versus supporting a sibling or loved one going through theirs?
Okay. I'm gonna break that into two parts. So if you are the sibling struggling with addiction, I would not recommend doing what I did, which was white knuckling it and taking care of it by myself. Because that was really, really difficult. And it actually wasn't doable. I didn't get anything under control until I got a therapist, which I mentioned in the article that I knew a 12-step program wasn't for me. My dad had been bringing me to 12-step programs with him when I came home from college because I was that much in a rough place, and my parents had noticed that. I mean, I had almost totaled my car more than once. There was a lot going on. So, my dad had tried to get me into 12-step programs. But I was a functioning alcoholic. I was going to work, I was making money, I was going out with my friends still. I was totaling cars, but I was doing everything else I was supposed to be doing. So I had a really hard time actually acknowledging that I had a problem. I just thought I was just 19, 20, 21, and being a normal 21-year-old. And to some degree I was, but to some degree it was definitely really unhealthy and out of hand and self medicating. So I would recommend that if you're somebody who's struggling, it's so hard to look in the mirror and acknowledge that you have a problem. And I want to be really clear there. You're not the problem. You just have a problem that you need to address. And those are two very different things. But I would really encourage you to trust the people around you. Um, Sometimes when we are really in a dark space, we can't see clearly. And sometimes we're in such a dark space that we can't even recognize that we can't see clearly. So if you can trust the people around you, try to trust the people around you. The people who love you would not do something to hurt you intentionally. And a lot of the times, even if it's something that you perceive to be harmful, I don't actually think, when you're in addiction that you're really in a headspace to be able to discern that very appropriately or accurately. Not to invalidate your feelings because everybody's feelings, especially when you're going through addiction, they're so raw because it's all that suppressed stuff that's usually coming up in those periods of of your life and process. But trust the people around you and get help. And that doesn't have to be a 12-step program. I definitely mentioned it in the article I wrote with you guys. Like, find what works for you, but do something about it. Try to trust the people around you. Try to trust their discernment and judgment, and try to take some kind of action to help yourself. Because the more you ignore it, the bigger it's going to get. And then I would say if you're the sibling who is not struggling with addiction and your sibling is the one that's struggling with addiction, um, it's really hard. It's really, really, really hard because especially as an older sibling, we're any birth order, but especially as an older sibling, I feel like we're really biologically wired to like defend and protect and take care of our people. And that's a really hard thing to balance when somebody's going through addiction because what you really shouldn't do, I would really recommend not doing is enabling, which can be really hard and it can definitely get misunderstood as like support and love. Um, but then also balancing that with the reality that it's not your job to save them, which is a really crappy pill to swallow. But it's not your job to save them. Unfortunately, all you can do is encourage them and empower them to take the steps that they need to take for themselves. Because, and I think probably a lot of people maybe listening probably know this, but somebody who's struggling with addiction, you can lead a horse to water, right? If it's not coming from them, if they're not feeling the need to make a change, they're that change isn't going to stick. It's not going to last that long because it's not coming from them. It's coming from this external pressure to people please or to fit in or to not disappoint your parents or like whatever all the reasonings are. And none of those reasons are going to keep someone sober in the long term because all of those reasons come back to shame. And shame is a really, in my experience, professionally and personally, shame is that particular experience, emotion, feeling, whatever you want to call it. It's really hard to find a workaround for that. So if we're finding our motivation for change through shame, it's never gonna stick. So if you are the sibling that is watching your sibling go through substance use, I would just say do the best that you can do to take care of yourself and show up for them when you can show up for them. And that doesn't always mean you're going to get it right. There were definitely times, and this was part of what made the grief so hard, but there were definitely times where I wish I showed up differently for James. And at that time, though, I only had the capacity that I had. So, though in hindsight, maybe I wish I showed up differently, I only had the capacity to show up as I showed up. So, giving yourself grace. And if you have to take a step back, sometimes you do have to take a step back. There was a point where it killed me to do it and it didn't last more than like maybe 7 to 10 days. But there was a point where things did get really escalated with my brother that I got to the point where I was like, don't call me. I don't want to talk to you. Don't show up at my house. Like I don't have the space for this right now. Um, and I think that was something that needed to happen because he came back to me and was like, you know what? I'm really sorry. Actually, that was like really fucked up. I shouldn't have said this or done that. Um, and then we were able to have a much better relationship from there after a really healing conversation after I was able to set a healthy boundary. So I would say, trust yourself and do your best to balance that self-care with taking care of and loving and trying to support your sibling. Tall order, but you can do it.
I loved what you said about, you know, functioning and not realizing it was an issue and setting healthy boundaries. Our guest speaker from January, Willard, or maybe it was December, Willard Brooks, he's a motivational speaker, but he struggled with addiction for many, many years. And he would get up to work every day. He'd drive to work. He had a normal 9 to 5. He owned a home. He owned a car. Everything was normal. But he'd black out every night and he crashed cars. And one time he OD'd, crashed a car, and he'd always call his mom as backup. And it wasn't until his mom said, I'm not bailing you out this time, that it was a wake up call because he lost that safety net. And that was the click of like, oh, wow, what am I going to do?
And I'll be honest, that's how it happened for me too, is I was functioning. Like I said, I was able to go to work. I was able to hold a job. I was holding multiple jobs at the time, honestly. Most of my friends didn't think much. There were a few friends who knew, right? And were like, Kat, you should probably do something about this. But most of my friends who didn't know me that well didn't think anything of it. They just thought I was like fun and I was the life of the party and I knew how to have a good time. And then I totaled my car one night on my way home from a friend's birthday party, and I called, 2 people that I thought I could count on, 2 separate people, and both of them one of them showed up, but then just, like, left me. She, like, showed up and, like, dipped, and then the other one was like, "I'm not coming to get you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, this is like, you've done this before. Like, I don't know what like, it sucks. I'm sorry, but I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm not helping you right now." And that's probably the best thing she could have done for me because it saved our relationship. And we were able to have a much same thing with my brother. We were able to have a healing conversation and move forward in a much healthier way than we would have if she had come and bailed my ass out.
I think it takes a lot for somebody to say they value you as a person more than your addiction and to have that wake up call for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I didn't really realize it until I was put in that same position, but the amount of strength it takes to say, you know, I really, really love you and I want to be there for you right now, but I know that if I come and bail you out of this situation, I'm actually just going to reinforce that what you're doing is okay. So I'm going to take a step back right now. That's a really, really hard thing to do. But I think if you can do that, like you're the strongest one of the strongest people I know because that takes a lot. It takes a lot to do to somebody you love, but you do it from
They
love.
value their love of you more than their perspective of you on them because they know you're going to get pushed back. They know they're going to resent you for a little bit, but they value your health and your wellness more than that.
Exactly, and that's what real love and support is, right? It's not I don't wanna say it's not enabling because enabling is just misguided love and support. It's still coming from a place of love and support, but it's, like, unhealthy guided, right? It's unhealthy love and support, whereas setting that boundary, as hard as it can be for that person that's setting the boundary, that's the best thing you can probably do for yourself and your loved one. No, not probably, that is the best thing you can do for yourself and your loved one.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced during your journey with addiction, and with your journey with James?
The hardest thing for myself was realizing I had a problem. I didn't wanna admit it because, both of my parents drink pretty regularly, and this is not to shame them. My parents are really great people, and they've done a lot for me and my brother, and we're really supportive, and just amazing after James died, which, is really hard, I think, for anybody. So this is not to shame my parents, but there was this level where I think it's also a generational kinda societal viewpoint of, "Oh, I only have a couple of drinks, like, 3, 4 times a week," but if you're doing that 3, 4 times a week and you're getting loaded every time you're doing it, even if you're not doing it 7 days a week, it's still in that gray area, you know? And the one thing I will say that I've taken from a 12-step program is that addiction and anything that kind of falls into that umbrella is self-diagnosing. So if you can't identify it yourself, it doesn't matter if somebody in the room is like, "Hey, you have a problem." Because if you don't think you have a problem, you're not going to do anything about it. So I think definitely the hardest thing for me was acknowledging that I had a problem because all my other friends could drink in college and not total their cars and not make asses of themselves when they drank too much. So why couldn't I do that? Like why was that so hard for me? So that was definitely the hardest thing was just being able to sit down with myself and look in the mirror and be like, "Babe, you gotta kind of look at it and deal with it." That's it's uncomfy. It's really uncomfy. And our egos are developed to keep us safe. So when we sit down in that space to look at ourselves, your ego's going, "Don't look at it. Run away. I'm perfect. Don't look at it." So it's really, really hard to sit in that uncomfortability and acknowledge to yourself, I might have a problem that I need to address. Which is why I think so many people who do struggle with addiction struggle for so long because addiction comes with a lot of pain, whether it's losing your family or losing your job or living on the streets or whatever, being sick, getting in and out of the hospital and rehabs. It comes with a lot of pain. But for a lot of people, that those symptoms, the symptoms that we experience in their life, right, of like being addicted, that is less painful than looking at the trauma, than looking at themselves. And it's hard. So that was the biggest challenge. But I would say, like, if you are struggling and you can do that, you're amazing. You're so strong, and you're way stronger than you realize. So that definitely was the hardest thing for me. But I think for being a sibling, watching my brother go through that, the biggest challenge, kind of going back to my earlier point, was like being able to actually realize when it was time for me to take a step back, because the timeline of both of our problems or both of our struggles were very, very overlapped, and I only kind of got my stuff together like maybe the last 3 years of his life, from like by the time he was like 19 to 22, because that would put me like in my early 20s. So by the time I was in my 20s, mid 20s, I was getting it together. Um, so the timeline of that was really hard for me too, because I was still in therapy weekly, sometimes twice a week. I was still learning how to set boundaries. I was still getting, not even learning how to set boundaries, I was still getting comfortable with the idea that I could set a boundary with somebody. That wasn't something that I ever even knew I could do, because I was a people pleaser my whole life, and I always want to help people, and I want to be like the do-gooder. So for me, the hardest thing was knowing and accepting and trying to find some level of comfortability with the fact that I could actually set a boundary with my brother, and take a step back when I needed to. And that's not easy to do either. But I've also learned in my short 30 years, everything in life that's hard to do, it's usually worth it. If it's easy, it's not worth it, but when you work hard for something, it means more.
Our next question is one that I think you touched upon really well in one of your episodes of your podcast. Um, and it talks about how did you find resources to keep you
Mhm.
going through the tough moments. And I think that's such a really big part of having you here today is the acknowledgement of there's not a lot of resources for
There's
siblings.
not. There's not. And I meant to bring it with me. I don't have the physical book on me. There is a book that came out last year, and it's really good. Actually, I think the reason why I loved the book is like within the first page, she's like, "Yeah, there's no resources on this," and I was like, "Okay, cool. I wasn't the only one who felt that way." um, and I know I'm not the only one. I have the girl that I do the podcast with. She also lost her brother. So we've both had that experience, and unfortunately, because I did lose my brother, a lot of people who have lost their brothers either, or siblings, not just brothers, prior to me or since I lost James, a lot of them have like come to me and been like, so where do I go for help? Like what's out there? So I know that a lot of us have had this similar experience. There really are very minimal resources. Before, the book is called, the book that I was referring to that was written last year is called The Forgotten Mourner's Guide to Grief, and then it's called Always a Sibling. I can't remember the author right now, but it's in the resources list that I sent you guys. So if you guys like post that, everybody should be able to find it. It's a really, really good book. And to me, it's actually crazy that it only came out last year, because people have been losing siblings since the beginning of time. I'm not special, right? Like there's so many people who have lost their sibling. So what I did, and what I would encourage everyone to do who is looking for resources specifically on sibling loss, the few things that are out there, even though that they can be a little limited, I would still really encourage you to look into them. So that book I mentioned, my podcast, we only have one season out, but we are working on our second season now. But even through the podcast, there's this definitely a small community that you can connect with on our it's Instagram. There's definitely a lot of people on there. Um, and I would also say what I did was I just found general books about grief, and I took what worked and I left what didn't, which I'll be honest is frustrating, because parents, friends, spouses, they don't have to do that, right? They just get a book that's like, here you go, mom, which they deserve those books, but so don't we as siblings. So it's definitely frustrating to think that, you have to kind of sift through resources to find stuff. But because there are limited resources, I would encourage you not to limit yourself just to sibling resources, because there are still good resources out there on loss and grief that aren't directed specifically for sibling loss. I know that there's one book that I read in my period of grief that was written by a neuroscientist. Her and her husband were both neuroscientists, and her husband died of a brain tumor. And the book was fascinating because she really intertwined like a lot of the medical science with her experience as a human. And it was a really powerful book. I think it's also in my resource list. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called Before and After Loss. Um, but it's a great book. But yeah, my suggestion on the resources would be not to limit yourself just because there are limited resources, and also to get creative. There's a lot of good Facebook groups. Um, Decent. I don't know if I would say good. They're decent Facebook groups, but because there is a lack of resources, the Facebook groups are great to go to if you're, especially if that loss is very fresh. I've found that those are really good places to kind of just have um open conversations with people who have gone through similar experiences. Sometimes just reading the posts on those types of Facebook groups can be really validating. I know for me they were. Because it was just me and James. So when I lost James, I didn't even have another sibling to be like, hey, do you feel this way? I felt very alone in my experience. So being able to connect with other siblings, even if it was just through social media, made me literally not feel like a crazy person. Because I'm not gonna lie, I felt like a crazy lady after James died. And it that's what I think what grief does to a lot of people is it just becomes this overwhelming thing that you don't even know where to start with it. So you can always reach out to me. My socials are all linked. So you can always reach out to me on whether it's the podcast page or my personal page. But definitely the Facebook groups, and don't limit yourself because it can be easy in our human brains to get caught up in like, this fits in this box. This fits in this box over here. But take what works, leave what doesn't. That's my best suggestion.
Mm. I think the Facebook groups are such a fantastic idea because it's such an isolating thing.
It is.
Um, you know, just addiction as a whole is incredibly isolating, which is insane because it's 2025. Almost every single person you know knows a loved one who has struggled in some sort of way. And one quote that I'm not going to say it right because she, the mom in the group said it fantastic, and I just can't recall it word for word. Um, but on one of our Tuesday share groups, there's a mom who's been coming to us for months, and she said, I go and I talk to all my friends all the time, and they'll say things like, I'm sorry for you. How can I help? But they don't understand what I'm going through. And it's like I'm speaking Chinese to them, and they're just smiling and nodding, and they're trying to be supportive, but they don't know what I'm saying.
Yes.
And then come to a support group, and it's like everybody's fluent in Chinese.
Yes. No, that's exactly how it feels. And it's funny because even my parents, right? Like we lost the same person, but we didn't at the same time because they lost their son. I lost my brother. So we can both understand each other. All I should say all three of us can understand each other to a degree, but there is that point, that tipping point where I have no idea what it feels like to lose your child. I can only imagine, and my heart breaks for my parents every time I consider that because I can only imagine what it feels like. But also, neither of my parents have any idea what it feels like to lose a sibling. Um, and that's definitely where, and that's just in my core family, right? Like, and to your point, when I would talk to my friends, I had this one friend who was like, "Oh, I know how you feel," and it was one of those moments where I was like, "Okay, but you don't actually know how I feel. Your brother's alive. He might be on the other side of the country, but he's alive, so you don't know how I feel." Um, and yeah, I mean, even people who had been through loss, similar loss, would talk to me, and they would not necessarily sibling loss, but just like, loss and grief in general, and would talk to me, and the first thing out of their mouth would be, "Well, how are your parents?" And I was like, "Well, not well, but I'm not doing great either. Thanks for asking." So yeah, it definitely can be a very isolating experience, but that's why I really, really, really like can't encourage it enough. Find the Facebook groups, go check out our podcast. Feel free to connect with us on the podcast Instagram. I can also share my personal Instagram because I also just share a lot of content outside of You Die, I Die about sibling loss there too. Um, but yeah, that would be my best suggestion, especially because it's just it's so isolating. So be graceful with yourself. Be graceful with your friends and family that don't understand. They're doing their best. It's infuriating that they can't understand you, but it's not their fault. You're just in a situation or in a experience that they have never experienced. And how could they possibly relate to you if they've never been there?
Do you have any closing words on anybody else who has been in your situation and how they can cope and how they can, you know,
I have a lot of thoughts, so I'll keep it brief, as brief as I can. I would just say, it's hard to be graceful with ourselves. I think, especially the society that we live in, there is a lot of focus on like doing, right? And producing, and then also consuming. Um, be graceful with yourself that whether you're struggling with grief or loss or addiction, just focus on you. And that's not an easy thing to do all the time, but as much as you can, like focus on your needs, focus on finding the supports that you need. Whether that is a 12-step group or maybe it's just a specialist who is, an OPT that specializes in addictions counseling or, whatever, something like that. So I would definitely say just make sure that you're being as kind to yourself as possible. If you bully yourself through this process, it's not going to make it any easier and you're probably going to be stuck in it longer. From my personal experience. Um, and then the other thing I would say, like, especially and specifically to my siblings who are dealing with sibling loss, I am so, 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 so sorry that you're dealing with this. I know that you probably feel alone, but you're not alone. And please come find your community, whether that's me and my podcast or another community of siblings, but please find your community because you are so, so, so deserving of being able to process that loss because our parents, spouses, everybody, else there are support groups and there are books about it. So you are also as a sibling just as deserving of that safe space to process a very deep loss in relationship because your sibling that's one of the most formative relationships in your life. That's your first best friend. That's your first peer. They're supposed to get old with you. They're supposed to help you bury your parents. Your parents aren't supposed to help you bury your sibling. So, just come find your community. That would be my suggestion. That was what helped me the most because without knowing that other people were also going through this, I would have probably really stayed stuck in the woe is me depressive state of grief.
well, we're at the point in our guest speaker event where we kind of open the floor. If anybody has any questions for Kat, you can pop it in the chat. You can unmute yourself, whatever you guys feel comfortable with. Do you have any questions?
I don't have a questions, but I just want to say how truly inspiring this is and the words of wisdom. You're giving hope to individuals out there who are struggling with, of course, not only addiction, but the loss or just anything that they're going through. So thank you so much, Kat. This is very inspiring, and we really do appreciate you taking the time being here. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dubia. It's really been an honor to be here today. I love talking about sibling loss, which I guess is a weird thing to say, but I love talking about sibling loss because we don't talk about it enough. So thank you so much for giving me a space where I can talk about it and try to provide some support and resources for people who might also need that support. So thank you both, Emily and Nubia. I really appreciate you guys and everything that Mothers Against Addiction is doing.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I have a question. What kinds of coping skills did you use
for yourself to get over your own struggles with addiction until you got to the point of being able to go to therapy?
That's a really good question. Thank you, Lorinda, for that. So for myself, it was the gym. I'm not gonna lie, and I think this is definitely a conversation that if you are in the realm of talking about addiction and moving through that, this is probably something a lot of people here maybe have heard. But a lot of the times, it's really helpful to replace that addiction with a healthier addiction at the very start. So for me, it was the gym. I have an addictive personality. I will always have an addictive personality. That's who I am. That's how I'm wired. So I found something else to just completely throw myself into. So it was the gym, and actually it was also gardening. I am a huge avid nature girl. I love nature. I think nature is the most healing medicine that is available to us. Go get your hands dirty, go get your feet dirty, go just throw yourself in a flower field. Those were honestly the two biggest coping skills, was throwing myself into something that I could hyper focus on, but it was something that I also felt really proud of. I was seeing, results in the gym. I was getting stronger. I was getting healthier, which helped me build my confidence up. And then through the gardening, I was creating food for myself. I was growing my own food for myself and my family and my community. And that also is like really huge in helping me build my confidence. And from there, having that piece of confidence built up, I was able to really step into doing a lot more therapy, looking at myself in the mirror, kind of doing the uncomfy work that comes with that. But yeah, those were definitely the first initial stepping stones to moving out of that place of addiction. So thank you for that question, Loretta. That was a great question.
That's, I know Charlotte, our chief program officer, she talks about a lot of coping skills of like meditation, and exercise is always up there. She knows the science behind it more. But endorphins, am I right, Charlotte?
You are. Endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, all working out is gonna fire all of those neurons in your brain to give you like those feel good chemicals, right? But so isn't nature. Nature and even the color green. You and I, Emily, live up in New England where it's starting to get light out, but up until like this past week, it's been dark, cold, and depressing over here. So even just sitting actually in a space where there's green, whether it's a house plant or like I go to the sauna, and our sauna has like a red light therapy option, and one of the colors they have is green. And it can be really helpful. Just the I think it tricks your brain, but just the idea of being in like a green space, it triggers that emotional happy feeling because we are directly connected to nature. Whether we are as a society removed from nature or not, um, historically, we come from nature. We lived in nature. We existed within nature and with nature. So being in nature and then also moving your body, two best things I would say that you can do. And then after that, meditation, breath work, yoga, um, all the woo-woo stuff as the kids might call it. Um, but like I said earlier in our conversation, the healing modalities and specifically more the somatic healing modalities were so helpful for me because you can talk through things all you want, but sometimes talking will only take you so far. And there's even like research that shows this. Like you can talk about stuff, but there are a lot of things that we repress, whether it's emotions, experiences, memories, whatever it is. And a lot of the times you're only going to be able to access that stuff through somatic breath work, movement, yoga, meditation, whatever it is. Massages can even help with that, moving that kind of energy, like wherever it's kind of stuck in the body or whatever. So I would say, building off of Lorinda's question, not just those first stepping stones, because those were definitely the first foundational, like the gym, being outside and that stuff, but moving up from there is explore what you're called to. Because like you might not be into breath work and yoga. You might hear me saying this stuff and you're like, oh my God, if I hear the word yoga one more time, I don't want to do it. And that's fine. Like if that's not what you feel called to, don't do it. Go lift weights or go for a run or go kayaking, like whatever it is you like to do. But I would really say, especially for the coping skill thing, do what you feel called to, do what feels right for you. Because it kind of goes back to that conversation or that point in our conversation about people who are dealing with addiction are not going to get clean or stay clean if it doesn't come from them, right? So I think the same goes for your coping skills. If you're reaching for a coping skill just because your therapist is telling you, well, deep breathing makes the parasympathetic nervous system and blah, if you don't actually feel related to that, you're gonna be like, well, I'm breathing because Karen told me to breathe, but like this is stupid, right? So do what feels right for you, what you feel called to do. That's what I would say. Except for picking up. Put the bottle down, put the stuff down, and do the other stuff that you feel interested in. Especially if it's coming from a place of like that childlike wonderment, right? Where you're like, I really used to like playing in the woods when I was a kid. Girl, go take a walk in the woods.
Love that. Love that. Does anybody else have any other questions for Kat? You can always pop it in the chat too if you don't want to come off mute.
I'm also really quickly gonna pop in the chat my personal Instagram just in case. Because sometimes the You Die I Die we both use that page. So if you are wanting to just specifically reach out to me, I'll put that in the chat.
And we'll get that resource page you sent us to up on your article as well.
That would be awesome. So I also just want to let everybody know that in the chat, it has a space between Chad and the last underscore. There is actually no space on Instagram, but the only reason why I had to put a space in the chat is because of the way that Zoom works. It will just disappear the underscores and make my cap Chad italicized. So I just want to clarify that for anybody. And I definitely am open to if somebody's not comfortable, whether writing your question in the chat or like coming on and saying your question, if you feel called to reach out to me and ask me directly, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. So if you want to pick my brain a little, it might take me a little while to get back to you, but if you want to pick my brain, feel free to reach out.
Hi there, I'm Robin. Can anybody hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Robin.
Hi. I'm new to the group. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. I'm kind of trying to understand my son's addiction. Like you, Kat, it started with alcohol. He would go to work, come home and stay drunk, get up in the morning and go to work. Then it led into more prominent things like he got addicted to cocaine. Then he tried to get clean. Now recently, which is a new word for me, is functioning addiction, where he can go to work, like you said, go to work, function. And I was blinded by it until now I'm seeing the effects of it, the screaming, the anger, and everything. My question to you is, what point did you get to that you realized that, hey, I need help? Because I know I can't force it on him, but I know that I have to step back as a mother of an only child. This is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do, because he's going to be homeless soon because I chose not to enable him, helping. I won't let him starve or anything, but I can't keep enabling him. But what was that breaking point for you, Kat, that you realized, hey, I needed help?
First of all, I want to say, Robin, thank you for being brave and sharing that experience and trusting me with that experience and trusting all of us in this container. And I also want to say that I'm so sorry that you're dealing with that. I can't imagine how that is to go through as a parent. I know just watching my parents go through it broke my heart. So my heart really goes out to you. And also, you're incredibly strong. Setting that boundary, it's the hardest thing that we can do, but I really do believe that it is what's best sometimes for our loved ones. So I just want to say, like, you're incredibly strong and thank you for sharing that. And also a great question. For me, I think I had a lot of breaking points, and I think the cherry on top was when I totaled my car I think I was 23 years old. which little old to be doing stupid shit. Your frontal lobe's not fully developed there, but it's just about there. And I definitely knew better at the time. So I think for me, starting to hit my mid-20s and like being in yet again another car accident that yet again impacted my finances really horribly and was definitely going to put me into a position where if it happened again, I was going to be kicked out of my parents' house and I could not afford to live on my own. So for me, just the idea of like not having somewhere to live and not being able to support myself was horrifying enough for me to be like, I got to pull my shit together. Um, but that was more the external factors. I think what really internally happened for me was that I had to acknowledge, and when I did acknowledge it, I was like, oh God, yeah, we got to do something about this. I had to acknowledge how sad I was. I had to acknowledge how heartbroken I was. And I wasn't heartbroken because my parents are horrible parents. My parents are really good parents. My parents are also people who did the best they could with the tools and knowledge they had. And they also had generational stuff that they were carrying when they were parenting me. So I had to acknowledge how some of the stuff that had happened in my childhood was actually still affecting me in my adulthood. And I had to, from there, also acknowledge and make peace with that wasn't necessarily me blaming my parents. And I had to kind of hold space for both of those things, which is not an easy thing to do. So I don't, of course, I don't know your son and I don't know the type of like close relationship or however the relationship with you two is, but I would encourage if he has like a close friend or if he's with a provider or if you guys have close enough of a relationship, um, maybe don't focus so much on the behavior because we talk about this a lot in therapy. I'm a family therapist, so maybe don't focus so much on the behavior because obviously the behavior is the addiction and the emotional dysregulation that's coming from that, right? The yelling, the disrespect, all of that. And then try to maybe see if he's willing to look below the behavior because behaviors always come from someplace, right? Even when we're talking about toddlers and they're throwing a tantrum, there's a need that they're trying to get met. And so I would say that my breaking point was realizing that I had a need that wasn't getting met and I had to find a different way to get that need met, which was doing that, what I say it to my teenagers, I call it emotional heavy lifting. So I had to kind of look at that stuff that was underneath the behavior. So that would be my suggestion to you and to your son if you guys are able to do that. And my other suggestion would just be like, just be gentle on yourself. And I know that's so hard. I know that mom guilt is a very, very real thing. I know my mom still struggles with it sometimes, thinking that she's the reason that James, used and she's the reason that he died. And there might have been things that happened in our childhood that contributed to it, but she wasn't the reason, right? Like my parents weren't the reason. My brother made choices and he made bad choices. And so all of that to say, I'm really proud of you that you're so strong. Thank you for trusting me with this question and trusting us all in this container with that. And just be as gentle on yourself and with him as you can. And it's not always easy because sometimes you want to just like wring their necks and shake them and say, what the hell are you thinking? And other times you just want to, give them that bear hug and whatever. So if I would say if you can just be very gentle with the both of you and maybe suggest to him if he's not willing to talk with you about it, to find somebody to talk about those underlying feelings, emotions, experiences that are kind of feeding into that type of behavior. That was a great question, Robin. Thank you.
It was. I think we had a great guest speaker event today, and we're so grateful to have Kat join us today, give a new perspective, give a new light to a really sensitive topic that I think she does phenomenally. And the fact that she took time out on her Saturday to come talk on our platform is just such an honor. It really is. For those of you who are new to Mothers Against Addiction and what we do, Tuesday nights we have a women's only support group. It can be mothers, sisters, grandmothers, caregivers. We just like to keep Tuesday night female only. We just kind of get a more comfortability in that regard. All of our support sessions are completely confidential. Those are not recorded at all. Those are not, you don't even have to use your real name. If you want to be Betty Sue that day, be Betty Sue that day and just hang out and chat with us. Once a month, we have a co-ed support group. It's the first Thursday of every month. We invite you to bring your spouses, your brothers, your male counterparts who sometimes have a tougher time opening up and talking about these things. Um, you know, and men can cry, men can share their feelings, men can be welcome to the conversation because they're hurting as well, just in different ways. So we have that on the first Thursday of every night, first Thursday of every month. At the first Saturday of every month, we have coffee and connections. Very informal event, co-ed, anybody is welcome. Pull up on a Saturday morning, bring your coffee, and just talk. We have a topic every coffee and conversations meeting. I believe one of the last ones was set on boundaries. We just open the floor and people just go for it. And it's a great way to connect and just not feel alone in these times. And then once a month, we have our fabulous guest speaker event that you're at today. We've not picked a April guest speaker yet, but we'll be posting who we select soon. But I think we're just kind of also riding off the high of having Kat this month because it really was an honor. And I hope all of you guys check out her channels, check out her resource. And yeah, if anybody has any other questions for Kat, last roundup, if you want to pop it in the chat, come off mute and ask. And if not, we'll kind of hop off the recording in a few minutes. And you guys can have a fabulous, fabulous weekend if you guys don't have any more questions. Oh, I think Shelly raised her hand.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So sorry. I was so looking forward to this and I did not make it home in time this morning. I'm so upset. But Kat, I just followed you on your Instagram. I just signed on that. And thanks so much because Tuesday nights are that's my Tuesday nights, my mom night. As many mom's nights as I can go to. My son's 22. He obviously, I'm sure at some point he's been exposed to fentanyl, but he does not use fentanyl, heroin.
That's great.
I think that's about it. Meth, those three he hasn't, God willing, gotten to. Unfortunately, he's done everything else. He's totaled 2 cars in 3 months. He was in 6 accidents with people. In a total of 3 months, he totaled 2 of his own cars. One, his girlfriend was going 100 miles an hour, flipped the car. He had to pull her out. They flipped like 3 times. And then 3 of his other friends were in accidents and he was in the car. And so he's claiming now he's quote unquote sober because he's changed from hardcore drugs to alcohol. And now he's drinking all the time. And for some reason, when he was using, he would always lie. And now all of a sudden, I moved to Florida. He's in Rhode Island. He was supposed to come with me, but he got in trouble, and now he's on probation for a year, so he can't leave. And I don't think he'll end up coming down here because I don't think this is a good place for him with drug addiction. But now he's all of a sudden FaceTiming me from the bar, FaceTiming me from parties, and he's like, "Oh, this is my mom," and he's telling me all these things that he's doing. He's like, "Don't worry, Mom. We're just gonna drink. We might do some shrooms, but what the hell do I say to him when he's telling me?" Like all of a sudden, like I'm like, I host mothers meetings, so I'm like I delve into this. I mean, this week alone was on the phone 3 nights in a row with someone whose son has overdosed all week. And all of a sudden he's telling me all these things and I don't know how to respond. Like I say, please be careful, who's driving? I'm driving, but I'm going to stop drinking a couple hours before I leave. And, I'm going to drink water and I don't know what to say. Like, I'm like, please be careful. Like this, you know what I mean? You're dangling by a thread.
Yeah.
And the drinking, the other day he called and he's like, oh, I just got up. It was like, I don't know, 1 in the afternoon. He's like, I gotta drink a beer. I have such a hangover. And so I'm like, I know what he's doing, but the detachment was great because even though I knew what he was doing, I didn't see him. I didn't see him walking out to the car with a bottle of Tito's. I didn't see him walk him out to the car with, a 24 pack of beer or whatever. So I thought, it was nice because even though I know what he's doing, I wasn't seeing it.
Yeah.
But now he's deciding to share it all with me. And I don't know how to handle that. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's really well. First of all, I want to say, Shirley, thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for your just like very kind words and feedback at the beginning of that share. But thank you for sharing that, and thank you for trusting again us in this container and trusting me. Um, the therapist in me, I'm not gonna lie, is very like that's very interesting behavior. It seems to me, this is again just my perception. But the family therapist, youth support worker, or mentor in me is kind of hearing that and going, okay, well, it sounds like he wants to be close to you. That's what I'm kind of getting from that, right? Because he sounds like he's calling you a lot and he wants to have conversations with you and he wants to tell you what's going on in his life, which tells me that he wants to be close with you and have a relationship with you. But obviously, the way he's going about that is distressing to you and potentially even harmful to the relationship, right? So I would suggest, and I want to also preface this with, I am not a mother. So take what works, leave what doesn't. But I would also maybe suggest if you think he's able to have a direct conversation about it. And it's tough when our loved ones are struggling with addiction, because sometimes we have to kind of like, right, walk on thin ice and feel it out and figure out, okay, is now a good time? Maybe I should wait until later when they're in this type of headspace or whatever. But you know your son best, so trust your judgment. But I would say if you think he would be able to hear you and you guys are able to have a close or a direct conversation, I would maybe encourage you to speak from the heart and just let him know, like, I love you so much and I want to know what's going on in your life, but it's really hard for me to hear about your life when everything that's going on in your life is coming back to partying and drinking and addiction. And it makes me really nervous. I'm your mom and you're my kid. I makes me really nervous to know that we're like 1,000 miles away from each other. And God forbid if something happens to you, I got to get on a plane. I'm not going to be there in an hour. So I don't know if that's something that he would be able to hear, because I definitely know for myself and know for my brother that it's really hard to hear our loved ones when we are in addiction, because we're also in denial a lot of the time. But what I've also found with myself, my brother, and a couple of my clients is, if kind of what I said to Robin, if you can stop focusing on the behavior and kind of get to the stuff that's under the behavior, um, that might be like a more helpful approach. Um, and just setting that boundary with him too. Like I said, like I want to hear about your day. I want to know how things are going, but not if all I'm going to hear about is partying. Like that makes me worry about you. Um, and I wonder, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know you guys that well, but I wonder if it sounds like he wants to have that conversation with you. He wants to be able to have you in his life. So I wonder if you can tell him, like, it really makes me worry about you. I'm losing sleep over it. I'm stressing. Stress is not good for our hearts. It's not good for any part of our body, especially as we get older. Cortisol has even more of an impact on our bodies as we get older. So maybe making it more about you than making it about him. Because sometimes when we're in addiction, a lot of that feels like we're being blamed and shamed a lot, which is not always everyone's intention, but that's how it can feel. That's how the addict can internalize it, or the user can internalize it. So I would maybe encourage you, like I said to Robin, focus on the stuff that's going on below the behavior or underneath.
Yeah, and we've had several of the conversations, and it's like, I said, I worry about you. Like, we've had that dialogue. We have it, but I mean, everything you said is true, and I've done all those things with him, and But the fact that he is telling me, and I guess this is like the mother's like, it's like when they smile at you for the first time, it's refreshing to hear that maybe he does want to have a better relationship with me. And maybe, as that grows and he's more honest with me, because obviously when he was in full blown addiction, it was all lies. I mean, I had to put him into mental health treatment because that is the underlying cause. He has many diagnoses, but what keeps happening is he goes to court and they order him for a year to go to a counselor or a psychologist. He goes to a psychologist once a month for an hour, and he goes to court once a month. And they say, okay, have you been to your psychologist? Yep. Do you have your letter? Yep. You holding your job? Yep. You been in any trouble? Nope. And that's it.
Yeah, the
He's
system is
not doing
not
that.
built to help people. I hate to say.
Now, and the first two accidents, I can't help but be scared to death because the first one, his three friends that he just dropped off would have all been killed, all three. And the second accident, I don't know how he survived that one either, but he had to literally, I don't want to trigger anyone, but like literally climb out of these cars. And I mean, the cars are just covered in blood. He has no idea what happened. And he fell asleep on that one. And then he went into psychosis. Like he has a panic disorder also. And so he's laying on the top of a roof. They ran from the car because someone said, "Oh, I'm going to call the police. Are you okay?" And he's like, "We're okay." And they ran. And they ran they found a ladder near a building. And they climbed up on the building. They pulled the ladder up and laid there for 3 hours while the canine and the police were searching for him. And then, unfortunately, there was a car accident in that state because he wasn't in his home state. In that state, 2 days later, so there were unfortunately 4 young men killed in a car accident. So his case went to the wayside. They never searched his car. They totally, after 5 months, the insurance company just said, "We're going to pick it up." They don't even have the report yet. And the last accident was in June, and he's been to court all along, and they still don't have the report from the police so they just keep putting it off, and they put him in this diversion program. But he won't take meds, and they can't make you take meds. So it's so frustrating because if he would get to those, he needs a mood stabilizer. He's been on them for years, but when he was younger, he had really bad reactions. When they first start, it's medicine. I used to work for cardiology. It's a recipe. I mean, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And as an adult, I can ride that storm because I suffer from the same thing. But as a child, when you have those horrible reactions, you're scared to death to go on it. But the biggest problem, and this is where I'm getting to, and then I won't keep you because I didn't get back and I feel awful. But he's literally my mother, who is the alcoholic in my family. So he says, well, what? He goes, "Oh, I had a really bad day at work today. I was so pissed off when I got home. But I sat down with my grandmother and we had a few beers, and then I took a shower and then I went out." And I'm like, he's sitting there drinking with him, and then knowingly he's going out drinking and driving. So that's the hardest thing I'm having because I know that. And the other thing is, she would never call me if something happened because she doesn't want me to think something bad happened while she was taking care of him. In her eyes, he's 20. So she is. I mean, enabler is way of an understatement for her. I don't even know what you would call her. She co-signed twice for cars. After the first total, she co-signed for a $20,000 car. Now she co-signed for a $36,000 truck, which I feel better. However, his car payment is $722 a month. His insurance is $750 a month. And that's not even when his accident's all caught up yet. So no matter what I do, I'm being worked against because she's like, "Well, she just treated you as a lab rat when you were a kid, putting you on medication over and over and over and over." So he's hearing it from her not to do it. And then she's like, "You can't even drink if you want." So I have the other quote unquote bad parent is my mother. who I don't speak with. I don't have a relationship with her because of this. Because I put him in state care, put him in treatment, she got him out. I put him into an assessment center, she got him out. How could you put him in those horrible places? Because I had 3 broken ribs. That was why. I had 3 broken ribs. I got shoved. He did, he would do what he would do, and then 24 hours later, after he woke up, he would come out with the most intense rage once he came out of whatever he had been doing. And he was eating acid like candy. I mean, all day long. Even his best friend called me. He's like, this is my Snapchat. This is my login. I want you to go on there, and I want you to see what he's doing. And I don't care if it takes a blood test. You gotta lock him in. I don't care what it takes, but he called him his brother. You gotta save my brother. And so he's taken that one addiction, like you were talking about going to the gym and things like that, for us for us to cope. He's taken that addiction of the drugs to the alcohol now.
Right.
So, and he's talking to me. So the one good thing is he has taken up music, and he's like, I really want a new guitar. So I bought him one for Christmas. I bought him an amp. He's playing. He sent me a clip, and of course it's that head-banging, rap, disgusting talk, but he's playing the guitar, and he's got solos, and it's amazing. So as hard as it was to say, at first I was, the old me would have said, what the hell is that? You can't even understand it. The guy's screaming. It sounds ridiculous. But I was like, I'm like, that sounds awesome. I know that's you in the guitar solos. I can hear you in the guitar solos. That was you, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm doing so good at it. And I said, I'm glad you're not doing that screaming thing. I said, you wouldn't last. He goes, no, I tried it, and I couldn't do it for more than 2 times. So he's having the dialogue, and luckily I'm physically detached, but what that fear is, something's going to happen. She's not going to tell me, and I'm not going to get there in time. And it's everything I tell parents not to do, but it's much easier to help not that I tell them not to do it, meaning I don't say don't do it. I say, it's very difficult. But for me,
it's harder when it's your own person, right?
Yeah.
As your emotions are involved in it, which makes it so much harder to use your frontal lobe and make a sound decision when your emotions, especially as a mom, you're biologically wired to protect, save, swoop in, all the things, right? Well, so not only is your biology of your role as a mother going against you, not against you, but, kind of working against that reasoning piece, right? But also he's your family. Never mind, him being your son, but he's just in general, he's your family. So, I can only imagine. My heart really goes out to you, Shelley, and I really want to thank you for sharing all of that. I think you obviously know your situation best, but maybe I would suggest, if you're comfortable with it, setting some more boundaries around that stuff with him, maybe telling him, I want to hear how your work day went, or I want to hear how things are going with your girlfriend, or how things are going like with his best friend that's like a brother, right? Like maybe give him some guidelines of like, these are the things I'm comfortable with us talking about, and these are the things that I'd really rather like just not have a conversation about because it upsets me, hurts me, yada yada.
Makes me worry. Yeah, and it's funny that you brought it up. Not funny, but I have a brain injury and it's on the prefrontal cortex. So I'm just emotional enough as it is. I can get on and help any mom that's in a meeting. I mean, I can tell them exactly things that they can do, things that they can help. But my prefrontal cortex that's damaged from the brain injury, it's like I'm doing the complete opposite of everything that I should be doing. So I'm just, you get to the point where it's like, I'm like, I want him to share with me, but now I'm like, I don't want him to share this much. So I'll try those boundaries, but I don't want to shut him down either, because I'd rather, if he keeps the dialogue open and he said, I'm going to go back to the gym soon. He's like, I'm putting on weight. That's the other thing. He was young. When he was younger, he was heavy. And so he got bullied a lot. And, so he's got a lot of anger. He didn't meet his dad until 3 years ago when he was 19. That's a whole lot of anger. It's always been just the 2 of us. But I've always had my mother working against me from day one with the consequences. Any consequence he had, she'd call me right up and say, "Why'd you take his phone?" I took his phone because he's talking to people in other countries on Xbox or on Instagram or on Snapchat or he's literally laying on the ground with a taser pointed at him, and he's videotaping it and putting it on Snapchat. And I don't want to take up so much time. I'm so sorry. I feel awful because I get back here in time. But the prefrontal cortex is my problem because I just go right to the panic mode.
I definitely can understand that, especially from like a
So-
biological standpoint, right? If that part of your brain is already has some damage to it and isn't functioning the way maybe it did prior to that brain injury, that's definitely going to create like a little bit of a barrier there for you. I would also encourage, and I definitely think I put this in the article that I wrote with Mothers Against Addiction, but if you don't have your own therapist, if you do have your own therapist, I love that for you. Keep seeing them. If you don't have your own therapist,
I do.
yeah, so keep leaning on that resource. Keep leaning on that resource. And sometimes I even because obviously we usually can only see our therapist like once a week for an hour, right? So the other thing I would suggest, little bit of a left field suggestion, but it is something that's been really helpful for me in the past couple of months is if you've ever heard of ChatGPT, it's just like an AI app. You can use it for a million things. I use it for everything from like helping me understand stocks to helping me reword an email or a text that has some emotional charge behind it that I don't want it to come off so, right? So, it's like I said, a little bit of a left field suggestion. Not everybody's comfortable with AI. That's totally fine. Take what works, leave what doesn't. But sometimes having a sounding board, which is what I have used ChatGPT for, can be really helpful to process things in the moment that your therapist is not available or like a family or friend member isn't available. So that might be a helpful resource too. And thank you
That's a
so
good one too. Yeah, I was going 3 times a week, and I was going 3 times a week virtually, and I'm really trying to keep her as my sounding board so I'm not talking about it all the time with other people.
Yeah.
Because, like I tell all my moms, what we're doing is completely unnatural. We are going against everything we're taught to do, like you were mentioning, and so it's completely unnatural. But all of a sudden, with all this sharing, I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was better off not knowing. But the good thing is, and I will end with this, the good thing is my birthday is in a month and
Okay.
he's coming down.
Oh,
He's
good.
actually coming down, even though he's not going to get here till midnight and won't get back from the airport till almost 2 in the morning. We'll have all the next day, which I think I'm going to take him to Gatorland. The next day, he'll be here all day. We have to leave for the airport at 6. So I'll have like almost 48 hours with him. And then he's not going to get home till like 1 in the morning. I'm like, are you going to be all right for work? And he's like, Mom, I party till 3 and go to work at 6. I'm like, there it is. But he's like, I'm going to get it home at 1 o'clock. He's like, I'll have somebody pick me up and I'll go to work. So he's coming for my birthday and it's just going to be the two of us. So I'm hoping that face to face, we can have a lot more dialogue. And like I said, he's sending me his songs and he's sending me, and it's funny because he listens to and plays all the things that I'm 58 and he plays all the things that I used to listen to. And so it's so funny because I bought him this guitar and then he wanted these stickers and I didn't know what the stickers were for. So then when he sent me a picture, he placed them all on the guitar and it's like all the things that I used to listen to when I was young. And it's just funny how these kids, but then the headbang and stuff, but that was chat, D like dog, B like boy, T like Tom.
Yeah, ChatGPT, exactly. Here, I'll throw it in the chat too for you.
Oh,
You
good.
can just whether you have an iPhone or
Yeah, but
Android or whatever, you can get the app. It's great. Actually, one of my friends is the one who turned me on to it. Love it.
I'm gonna get on as soon as I get off.
Yeah, it can be really helpful. I will give you a heads up that you have to take a little time to like train it, so to speak, because it is AI. So like it might take a little, like a week or so for you to kind of help it understand what kind of support or feedback you're looking for. But after that initial week, it can be a really supportive soundboard. And I just also want to say, Shelly, I really hope that your birthday goes well with your son. I hope it's a nice visit. I want to thank you again for just sharing all of that and trusting us in this container. And yeah, I hope it goes well. I hope you guys are able to have a good conversation. And I would also encourage you, if you're not doing it already, um, treat yourself, take care of yourself as much as you can. Because to your point, right, like setting boundaries with our loved ones, especially when it's around addiction and especially when it's your child or your sibling, it feels unnatural. It's not what we're biologically wired to do. So giving yourself like a little bit of grace, and if that means that you're going to go out and buy yourself a little extra treat like a coffee, or you're going to take yourself out on an extra walk down by the beach, or whatever it is, go do that stuff, because you can't help him, or you can't empower him to help himself if you're not pouring from a full cup. So make sure you're filling your cup up too. That's the other suggestion. But I thank you so much, Shelly, for sharing all of that. It was a very powerful share and story. You can definitely, like I said earlier too, you can definitely connect with me on socials. And I would be curious to know how you find ChatGPT to be helpful or not. But yeah, anyways, thank you again.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for the birthday. It's in a month and 59. Boy, I'll tell you, it goes 30, 40, 50, and then 60. It's like it's quick, but thank you so much, Kat. And I can't wait to see the whole video later on. And Emily, thank you so much for letting me know that will be recorded. That it was recorded and it will be available, because I can't wait to watch it. So thank you again so much, Kat. And thank you, Emily, for hosting the meeting. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And watch Shelly.
We'll see you on Tuesday too, Shelly, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, for everybody who I said at the beginning, but I know some people hopped on a little bit later. We record the guest speaking event. So it just shows me and Kat, so everybody else can stay anonymous. And then our recordings get edited by our video editor, and then they get put up on our YouTube channel within about a week or two. So you'll be able to see the recording on YouTube. We also share clippets on our social media platforms. Mothers Against Addiction, we're on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. I feel like I'm missing one. But most of the platforms we're on. So feel free to check us out, and you'll be able to hear this recording. And please follow Kat too on her social media platforms too to get some more insight. And yeah, thank you so much for coming, everybody. I know if Kat has any final words, and then we can kind of wrap it up.
I just want to thank all of you for listening to me yap, as the kids would say, about sibling loss and about addiction, my experience, but it's also my brother's experience. I just hope that everybody here has gotten at least a little nugget of information that's going to be helpful for them. This has been very cathartic for me to know that my voice is supporting people to feel seen and heard. So I hope this has also been cathartic and supportive for all of you that have been here today. And I'm so grateful to Emily and Nubia and all of the Mothers Against Addiction team. You guys are amazing. You guys are doing really amazing work. And yeah, I'm just really grateful to be here today. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Kat. So much.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you in future meetings.